During my first year of MBA, most people get a job, right? An internship somewhere, and I just started a company.
Xiaoyin Qu, founder of HeyBoss AI, is a pioneering entrepreneur pushing the boundaries of AI-native companies. She made headlines by appointing Astra Prime as CEO, the first known case of an AI leading a company, and is now breaking down what it takes to run a fully AI-driven development agency.
Andreessen saw our idea and they liked it. So we basically launched, TechCrunch had an article about us saying, hey, this company just raised some money.
But momentum doesn't mean you understand the game.
I was very stubborn because I didn't know enterprise. I don't really want to touch it. Sometimes before you do it, a conference where 10,000 people are going to be here, you need to talk to somebody, making sure that you're really trusting the brand before you decided to make your conference. It's a big deal. And it turns out customers really, really want to pay for that. They're not going to choose your software if the service is not there.
Then she discovered the pattern.
We have some kind of inbound, they talk to us, and then we try to convert those people. We can make the deal within 3 calls. I figured that out later. So then that changed the power dynamic, from me begging for money to them begging me to take their money.
But the real insight wasn't about sales. It was about people.
The nature of business, there's a few dimensions, I would say. The first is like the frequency of the usage. Number 2 is that in order for people to adopt your business, is it just he himself can make the decision, or there's a huge group of people that have to collectively make a decision before they can give you a try?
The best fundraising strategy is actually building a product that people like and have the traction.
I do think it's important to be intrinsically motivated. And once you have those people, they're self-driven themselves.
What gave you the conviction to decide to pursue a startup?
Today we're joined by Xiaoyin Qu, founder of HeyBoss AI and the visionary behind the viral virtual events platform Run the World. Xiaoyin is a serial entrepreneur who has successfully exited 2 companies. After starting her first venture at just 19, she went on to serve as a senior product manager at Facebook. In a move that defined her early career, she dropped out of the Stanford MBA program to scale her venture-backed startup after securing funding from Andreessen Horowitz. During the pandemic, she led Run the World through a rocket launch moment, providing a critical solution for global conferences and eventually selling the business to a leading physical events company. Today, she is pioneering the AI CEO concept, creating autonomous AI teams that replace traditional development agencies. What happens when a founder steps down to let an AI CEO take over? In this conversation, Xiaoyin Qu details the evolution of autonomous AI teams and the hard-won lessons from her rocket ship journey through the pandemic. Xiaoyin breaks down the nature of business, explaining why usage frequency and decision-making friction determine everything from sales strategy to monetization. She shares candid insights on pivoting from consumer to enterprise, the reality of managing remote teams, and why the solo founder is more viable than ever. We explore how her new platform, HeyBoss, replaces manual prompt engineering with AI agents that interpret fuzzy human intent to build professional results in minutes. From fundraising leverage to the rise of the 100x talent, Xiaoyin provides a masterclass on building in the age of AI. The blueprint for Xiaoyin's unconventional career wasn't drawn at HeyBoss. It was drafted during a defining moment at Stanford. Please subscribe and turn on notification so you never miss the next one.
I got into Stanford MBA actually when I was in college. It was like this deferral program that you were supposed to work for a few years and then go to MBA. And then initially it was like 2 years of working at Facebook, and then I'm supposed to go, but I had a lot of fun on Facebook. So I keep delaying until it's like, okay, you can no longer delay, it's at Stanford admission office. So you have to either go or quit. So I was like, okay, I'll go. So I left Facebook when I was a senior product manager there, and I joined MBA 2018. But then I dropped out 2019, so I never got a degree.
That's a very interesting experience, because most of the people, they would just continue to study, and you chose to defer the study and you go to the industry first. And what was your thought back then?
Well, that was actually pretty conventional in that they want you to have more experience. They basically, there's a special program at Stanford MBA where you can apply as a college student, and then you got in, and then you're supposed to work for 2 years, and then you go back to MBA. So that was normal. I think maybe what's not normal is the fact that I dropped out. But still, like back in my class, it was before COVID. So during my first year of MBA, for the summer before the second year, most people get a job, right? An internship somewhere, and I just started a company. I tried many different ideas. But then back then, the one idea that really struck the chord was the virtual events. It was a new thing. There was not like Zoom events like today. So it's just my mom was a Chinese doctor. That year just came to US for international medicine conference. And turns out it was really hard for her to get visa and she doesn't speak English very well. So the whole process, that was super hard for her, super valuable because she met another doctor. They share the same exact rare patient case, super helpful, life-changing. But it was super hard for her because she doesn't speak English well, the visa takes forever. So I thought, okay, what if we can digitalize the whole conference experience, make it virtually possible for a large group of people, typically professionals, to share their expertise. So that's when we started the idea of virtual events.
Gotcha.
But that was before COVID and everything, so no one believed in the idea. We had to do a lot of events ourselves as an event organizer, just to prove the concept. And so over that summer, we basically did a bunch of events as an event organizer. We made a lot of money.
So that was 2019.
That was 2019, yeah. So and then Andreessen saw our idea and they liked it. So basically we got some funding before I started MBA too. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna drop out.
Oh,
so that's kind of how it works. It's kind of at the same time I kind of know that I'm not gonna go back because I really believe in that idea. And then we also get funding, so I guess I was able to persuade my parents. I was like, okay, let's drop out.
I know it's pretty unconventional among the Chinese parents group to have kids drop out. Also, you mentioned that it's very rare for Stanford MBA as well. Like how many of your classmates?
I mean, that my year is actually there are 12 people dropped out, so of like 400. It's not super rare, but it's rare
it's
enough.
Pretty real,
it's rare enough, but it's also not like impossible. I would say most people who dropped out, they all start a company. So I got really lucky though, because once I dropped out, we worked on the product, the software version of that virtual events for like half a year. We launched February 2020, and then the week after we launched,
that was
COVID hit. So we became like viral and popular almost instantly because all the conferences got canceled. So they had to use us. So and that's kind of our like rocket launch, moment.
What gave you the conviction to decide to pursue startup?
Well, kind of started my first company when I was 19, actually in college. It was a college counseling company where we were just helping, smart high school students in China apply for top schools in the US. So that was my first entrepreneurial journey. Was my co-founders at the time. We were college sophomores. It was like 19, 20-year-old. And then he actually dropped out college. He was like only to have 1 year of college and he just left. And I was already conservative. I was like, okay, I'm going to stay through school. So now it's a very famous educational counseling company today. He's still running it. But I kind of left after, I got the job at Facebook. So that was my first journey. That was not VC backed or anything, but we did learn quite a bit. So I guess it became really natural once you enjoy that. You realize, hey, now that you have experience at Facebook, have a little bit of savings. Maybe you can take more risk.
You got into the startup world very early on, and that gave you a perspective. And so even later when you go to the Facebook, that seed of ideas that you can do startup still is inside you. And and after several years, it took off, and you decided to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of always know that Facebook. I wasn't planning on staying at Facebook for 20 years because I kind of already know that. So it's not a hard decision back then. Also, I was 26. Doesn't have kids. I didn't have kids were mortgage or anything. So the risk is pretty low for me. I figured, why not? You know what I mean?
So tell us a little bit more. What exactly happened those couple of months around the pandemic?
Well, so we basically launched. TechCrunch had an article about us saying, hey, this company just raised some money. They just launched with a virtual events offering. And it was like kind of coincidental with some of the COVID started hitting. Some conferences announced they're going to be canceled. So part of our announcement, was that if your conference got canceled, come to us. We can make sure that your conference did not get canceled. And this for a lot of the conference organizers, they get paid way back from the sponsors, knowing that the conference is going to be around. If they're going to cancel their conference and they lose all their sponsorship money, they probably already spent some of those money. So we're like, we can help you protect your sponsorship money if you can just host it virtually. And obviously that was a perfect pitch at that time. And all of the conferences that you probably hear of, they all need a solution. So they all came to us. So it became like I would say like, that's when like product market fit hits. Like we were barely ready. Like our product is like shit. The quality isn't really good, but we were available. So there was a lot of interest, obviously. So we were growing really fast.
You mentioned that you were still like figuring out and building the product, like improving product back then. Did you face any challenge when when like you suddenly started getting a lot more users?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I personally, I was always a consumer product manager, so we thought we were going to help a lot of consumers organize events. But then when COVID hit, all we get is big, corporations and event organizers, large trade shows. Those are all like enterprise customer, and I did not really understand how it worked at all. I think our pricing model was not right. I did not really know how to do sales because we had a whole sales team talking to enterprises. That's what they're used to. So basically, I have to rebuild everything because initially I thought it's going to be product led. Everybody come to our platform, set up the event. We realized that is not the case. Sometimes before you do a conference where 10,000 people are going to be here, you need to talk to somebody, making sure that you're really trusting the brand before you decided to make your conference. It's a big deal, for the customer. So we were kind of figured that out too late. I would say, like looking back, we should have done that kind of more sales approach like way earlier, but I didn't know anything about it. And I thought, okay, I have a perfect product, everybody should join. But we realized, no, customer also need a lot of, talking just to build trust. So then, because that event is very, very important for them. So I think that I learned about like, sometimes you may want to do a more consumer or you think it's product led, but the reality is the nature of that business maybe require more talking and customer willing to pay way more if they trust you, but you have to build the trust. So that's something I kind of learned later, I would say.
What I hear you mention about it, you started company with the idea more as a consumer-facing applications, but when the pandemic hit, it's changed everything. And I still remember at the time, I was working in a startup back then, and all the marketing budget, they started shifting from the offline events into the online events. And that leads the opportunity of the enterprises. And you face a lot of challenges on that. And how did you eventually figure that out?
Well, I mean, I would say like it took us maybe too long, in my opinion. We should have figured it out sooner. But basically, we just hired the right people. For us, we realized our sweet and bread and butter is basically the mid-sized events, not like super huge conventions. Typically, like 10,000 people or 5,000 people. So our deal size is like what, $5,000 to $30,000. So basically, what I learned is that based on your deal size, then you determine the right kind of sales approach. If your deal size is like more than $10,000, typically customer want to talk to a person at least once. They want to talk to a person. They're not going to just pay the credit card $10,000. So we kind of figured that out a little bit late, I would say. Then we quickly add those account executive talking to those customers. So initially I thought that was a stupid idea because I hate services. That's not software, but that's what customers really want. And so some of our competitors start adopting those, service that they provided those services. They say, okay, for your event, we're going to support you, but you have to pay $20,000 more. We're going to have a human that hop on a call at all times during our event. And turns out customers really, really want to pay for that. And they are not going to choose your services. They're not going to choose your software if the service is not there. So that was interesting for certain events. And I learned that now I have a new perspective regarding like services, because I used to think those are not sexy. Those are like not technical, but sometimes for a certain type of business, you do need to offer services for people to adopt. And they are, as long as that services is something you can scale and they can pay you a lot of money with great margin, I'm not against the idea anymore. I think that I have changed quite a bit.
You have very interesting experience of like being a consumer founder before and now to the enterprise and B2B founders. And one point you mentioned very resonating is that there's no fundamental differentiation between B2C or B2B on that. At the end of it, people want your product, but also want your services. And so at the end of the day, it's the final solution that matters. And that really depends on the nature of your business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned about your hire, you did a hire that helped you to solve the challenges. I assume that was a leader of a go-to-market person. Is that?
Well, technically, yeah. So I think because I didn't know how to do those jobs before, frankly, I was basically keep hiring the wrong person because I didn't know. Even when it comes to a sales leader, there's apparently different type. They're like very big account salespeople that they are really good at cultivating high, powerful relationship with Fortune 500, whatever CIO, and they go on golf course, they go to like NBA games, whatever. But that's not the type of people that we need because the deal size we had was $10,000 or something like that. So we have a lot of volume. There's a lot of people calling us. There's all kinds of conferences. like American Roof Association want to have a conference just for roof builders, right? Some nursing companies. So we have all kinds of companies, mostly like medium-sized business, or there are also some large enterprises, but not for the hugest event, typically for a mid-sized event. So we basically have to quickly build a sales approach that took me a while to figure out. Our sales approach is people come to us, we have a call, essentially we have some kind of inbound, they talk to us, and then we try to convert those people within 3 calls. We can basically make the deal within 3 calls. That's I figured that out later. So what we really need, we have a lot of volume. We need to figure out the right sales leader that can scale those volume and figure out the right process to identify who is the right customer, who is not, and then making sure that those sales representative can sell within 3 calls. So that is a very different profile from a Fortune 500 CIO sales leader. That took me a while to realize that.
Many people, when they hear about our sales leader, VP of sales, they say, oh, they just do the same job, but the job is fundamentally
very
different.
Yeah. And then I kind of have to do the sales job myself to realize it. Initially, I thought, I don't know this. Let me hire somebody. And that was a bad decision because that was not the right type of leader.
Many founders, when they do the startup, they wouldn't be able to know every part of business. They might be good at building the product, but not necessarily good at go-to-market. And so then there's a decision like whether do you want to do the things yourself? Do you want to hire people to do that? What is your take now?
Well, I do think my take is that if you can, obviously, in order to make it right, you have to do every single job. The problem that I was facing is that I know too little. I don't know HR, I don't know legal, I don't know sales, I don't know marketing. I was a product manager, with 3 years of experience. So I had to learn everything, but then we have exploding demand from all over the world. We have to keep up. So I had to make some hiring decisions just to keep up. And a lot of them were bad decisions looking back. So I was thinking maybe what I should have done is maybe I can get some more advisor to help me. I should first figure out what type of leader do I need. I think that I have to figure out myself. And then I can hire the right leader. But I cannot really avoid that. I thought I could hire a sales leader to figure it out. That is not going to happen. I have to figure it out. But then once I figure out what type of sales leader I need, then I can hire. I think that's probably the best decision.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, being founder is like that. The plane is flying, you need to make tons of decisions. So like we have to at the meet, sometimes we make the wrong decision, learning on the go. There's a lot of unknown, especially in an area that you're not familiar with. Now that you have been through this and have some experience on it, how would you recommend founders who now do startup and have to solve problem not in their comfort zone?
Yeah. I think right now, if I were to solve a new problem within a domain area that I don't know anything about, I think the first thing I would do is probably understanding what type, like for example, let's say we want to hire a head of sales and I have no idea what it works. Probably I will first figure out what are those different types, like you can look at other companies, maybe similar to yours. Essentially like the nature of our business back then for virtual events is like people really give it a lot of attention to that event. They need a lot of persuading. Once they can be persuaded, then they're ready to sign a bigger deal. So that is more in line with more enterprise motion with some of those like, larger kind of company, like security company where you need to build a lot of trust before they convert, which is very different from maybe the companies like Notion where anybody can try it really easily. Okay, now you have a bunch of people try it. Now you persuade the company to buy Notion. So for us, the cost, the opportunity cost to try it is pretty high because the customer need to have a very successful event. So I think maybe understanding that first is very helpful. And then you can see what are other companies that are same nature, as our company. Is it more like a Notion-like thing? Is it more like a security-like thing? And then you try to figure out, maybe then those are the companies, my target company, I can maybe hire some advisors for. But I think the first part is understanding the nature of your business is rely on what. And it does take a while to understand how do you segment, how do you understand the nature of your company.
During the pandemic, there's also a lot of change in the industry. You mentioned one thing is that you are originally B2C, and then you are now hearing the market pool for you to go to more enterprise. There's also other cases like Zoom, which was originally really B2B focused, but then through the pandemic, it actually become the more like B2C. What is your take about how this like external change of the market is changing the business direction? Yeah.
Well, I used to be very stubborn because I always want to build a consumer company. And so when the business B2B pool was there, initially I kind of declined that. I said I wanted to really build a consumer company. Then I guess it took me a while to realize the nature of our business again is hosting events. So even for consumer, it's a big deal. You know, when you have when you organize an event for 5,000 people, that's a really big deal. So you're gonna have the same mindset. It's very rational. It's not gonna be like entertainment focused. It's very rational. You really wanted the peace of mind. That's very similar nature in enterprise, which is then, I guess once I realized that, it became natural for us to then do more enterprise approach. But I was very stubborn because I didn't know enterprise. I don't really want to touch it. But I think it's important now that if I were to analyze any business, I will try to understand the nature, like what I said. The nature of business, there's a few dimensions, I would say. The first is like the frequency of the usage. For our events, is actually once a year. It's not frequent. So because of that, people are just not going to always use us, month-to-month basis. It's a bad idea to try to sell a monthly plan. We try to sell a monthly plan for people to organize events, but they don't organize events every month. So it's a really, really bad idea. So I think the first part now I look into the nature of business, like what is the natural frequency? If the natural frequency is less than once a month, then it's not going to work where people just remember you all of a sudden. So you either have to sell them a big contract that's multiple years, or you have to basically constantly acquire them, and you may lose some people because the nature of that business is that the frequency of usage is low. That's number one. Number two is that in order for people to adopt your business or adopt your solution, is it just he himself can make the decision, that's it? Or there's a huge group of people that have to collectively make a decision before they can give you a try? For Notion, I think you can just try yourself. For our thing, if you organize an event with 5,000 people, chances are you have a team of people that organize an event with you. And then they want to make sure every single detail is great before they can commit. So there is a decision-making process, even to try it. Which is why basically we have to do a lot of stuff from like educational content to like office hour, where we basically directly talk to our customer and their team to help them make the decision. We even run a lot of trial events for them to try, before they can like buy. So all of that stuff is very important for them to commit, just because the decision making process to buy is very heavy for us.
Yeah, well said. Actually, those two factors also, from my experience, so important. What I have is first, the frequency is a high frequency application or low frequency application. For low frequency, you have to go to high value. Otherwise, the total addressable market would be too low. And then how easy the decision is made. You need a person to make decision or a team make decision.
Well, the other thing is also for low frequency events, you have to make a lot of money upfront.
Oh yeah,
that's really important. I didn't know that.
Tell us more. Why upfront?
Well, think about the least frequent event is wedding planning. Is hopefully once in your lifetime, if you don't get a divorce, you charge people a lot of money, right? They make a lot of decisions trying to figure out which wedding planner do I pick. But once you have a successful wedding, you do a great job. The idea is that you don't ever see your customer again, right? You're not gonna be able to retain them. So then hopefully if they like you, they can refer you to other friends of them. But you lose that customer forever. So I think if the frequency is really low, then people are gonna churn. That's just the nature of it.
Exactly.
Unless you can make them sell multiple year contract, and for conferences, people do. Sometimes they do a 5-year contract with this particular vendor, which is basically just saying like make a lot of money upfront. Once you sell them, make a lot of money. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense because then you always lose new customer. You always lose your existing customer. And so essentially you have to make enough money, but then you have to make your existing customer refer a new customer to you. So there needs to be a referral. So that you can reduce your CAC. But the most important thing is making sure that you make enough money from that customer.
Exactly. You mentioned a great point about when to monetize. So what I have mentioned about if the nature of your business is low frequency, you should monetize as early as possible. Like show that you did a value, and it's more transactional. But it's high frequency. Then you can build a trust, build a relationship. And the whole spectrum actually applies both to B2B and B2C. Like in B2C, it's actually super high frequency. So you can always delay the monetization. You can even delay to the point that you monetize through ads sometime down the road.
Totally. But obviously, like if you have to choose, I always choose the high frequency, right?
It's easier. We're much easier. That's pretty cool. Obviously you learn a ton, through the whole journey, and you also mentioned that the A16Z found you and invested you during the period. Tell us a little bit about how you got to know A16Z.
Well, so because like I said, we're event organizers ourselves, so we made some revenue. And so by the time that I talked to investors, I try to talk to investors before I really fleshed out the idea. Well, actually, before Around the World, we tried many different ideas. Most of them failed, miserably. I tried to
tell us some interesting idea you tried.
I mean, I did try to build the AI, therapist, but the
okay.
AI was not good enough. So it was more like rule based and it's kind of dumb, It was not actually very helpful. We tried to build all kinds of stuff, I would say, but then obviously when we talk to an investor without a fleshed out idea, or sometimes before our idea really proved traction, like any entrepreneur, I didn't really know a lot of investors back then, so I think a lot of them just kind of ignored me. It was not those conversations where you think everybody really wants to invest in you. It was not a happy conversation. But once we make some money ourselves, because we were the event organizer, we made some revenue. Then it became like, even when I talked to Andreessen, it became like, hey, this is working. We make money. If you wanted to get in, we're a rocket ship that's gonna make more money. But if you're not gonna get in, that's also okay because we're gonna make money anyways. So then that changed the power dynamic, from me begging for money to them begging me to take their money, So I think that is a better situation to be in. And then you have, obviously, there's one VC that's interested in, that Andreessen's interested in, now everybody's interested in, and then now I can have a higher valuation because there's more supply and demand, So all of that stuff, I think, just give me way more leverage because I have some data and I know that I'm making money. So it's like you either join you or not. And, so I think that fundamentally changed the power dynamic. And to be honest, for early stage, what I found is that most of the valuation are kind of bullshit anyways. You don't really know the price. The price is determined by how many investors want to invest in you versus, versus your supply and demand, right? So essentially, the more investors want to invest in you, the higher price. Yeah. Even though there's no fundamental to really back it up because they're so early stage. So I think that the fact that we have some traction, we have some real revenue, give me the confidence to confront other investors, like, hey, we can wait if that's not a good price, But if you want to invest in me, you have to play my role, and then that does help a lot in our process.
Yeah, that's a great advice. What I hear you about is that for founders, the best fundraising strategy is actually building a product that people like and have the traction.
Have some traction.
Some tractions. And then that will change the whole power dynamics between the founders and investors, and give a lot more leverage to founders. So that's such a great advice. I'm also very, very curious about the early stage because it took some process for you to get attraction, and oftentimes the founders are in a stage as well. They need more money to grow the business, and at the same time they haven't really showed the traction yet. So the question here is like, how do you decide whether you should raise money or not? Or if not, how would you make sure the company can have a way to get it to the way to grow without external funding? Yeah.
Well, I mean, for us actually, the virtual events, when we first, like I said, I was the organizer for virtual events. We didn't build anything. We were hacking around like Slack and Zoom and Eventbrite and some existing tools, and we just invite the speaker ourselves. Where essentially there's 6 different tools, and then our user still purchased the first event was a product management conference virtually, and then it was like invited the Facebook product managers, my coworkers, to participate in this conference for other people who want to be product manager, and it was like 6 tools you have to sign up using, like a Wix shitty website, the link to Eventbrite, the link to Slack, the link to Zoom, but people still pay for it. We made a lot of money from that. So that's when we realized, hey, people really have the demand because those people are not based in Silicon Valley. They normally don't see product manager from Facebook. So that for them is like a zero versus now they're able to. That's a big deal. So we actually didn't spend any money building anything, but we were making good money just from hacking around those tools. So I do think there are, especially now with AI, there are many different ways you just don't need to burn money at all to prove that people have demand.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So you actually do the go-to-market before you actually writing anything, like build. We
didn't do anything. We just made some money, organize events, and then once we do that, we organize 5 more events, like a data science event, a engineering something, and then we even did like basically like a fertility conference for people for women who are thinking about fertility, because we wanted to see how extensive this concept of virtual events can be. We've proven it worked for product manager, it worked for data scientists, it worked for venture capitalists, but maybe let's find something totally out there. So we had a conference on fertility, we had another conference on elephant protection with a nonprofit. So then that's when we realized that the concept of virtual events back then could be very extensive to all kinds of industry. So when we like kind of talk to Andreessen, the idea is like, hey, we'll make all those money from all those industry. You know, it was a shitty product that is not even a product. Can you imagine how much more money we can make if you were to invest in it? We actually built a software, and then that's kind of the pitch. You know.
I also want to dive in a little bit about another part of the startup building, which is about building the team, because it would take more than yourself to build a great product, and especially you build this your team and grow the company during the pandemic. I would imagine will cause a lot of extra challenges. Tell us how you build the early team of Brand the World.
Well, I mean, it was like less than 10 people. It was probably like 5 people before we launched. But then now everybody wants to do events with us. So we basically had to scale the team from like, back then from like, I think from less than 10 to 60 within a year, which is pretty crazy. And it was like remote. So actually, I learned a lot about how to manage.
The whole team is remote.
The whole team was because of COVID. But I also learned, even right now, my current company is also remote. I learned a lot about how to run a effective remote team. But yeah, we were able to hire talents from all over the world. And then we do try to have like overlapping time zones so people can work very effective. But yeah, the hardest part for me was back then, because everybody was hiring, including my competitor. I have a few competitors. They were even like 200 people or something like that. So we were hiring we were all like hiring like crazy. So there's a lot of wrong decisions in terms of hiring. We hired way too many people, and then we basically had to do a layoff. After when the COVID is over, we had to do a layoff. So and we realized after we laid off people, the productivity actually went up. It was more productive. So I guess I learned a lot about how do you make sure you hire the right people and what is the right process to figure out how many people you need from that process.
Being a startup founder often leads a lot of decisions that you need to make about when to grow a team, when to go faster, when to be more cautious. It's a lot of like continuous decision-making processes. And you also mentioned that you hire a lot during the pandemic, but after the pandemic, you realize you need to do the layoff. Tell us a little bit more what happens during and after pandemic.
Well, during the pandemic, obviously we have a lot of demand. So the hardest part for me was to whenever we always have work that we need to be done. So the idea we also raise a lot of money. We were making money, so it's like let's just get more people to solve the problem. But then a lot of times we make the wrong decision because we're trying to hire too quickly, or sometimes we don't even know the exact job description. We just know there's a lot of work. So let's just hire somebody who can solve those needs right now, without really thinking about longer term. Are those a good fit? And then so when those people join, initially it's good, but then we quickly realize either they do not meet our cultural bar or they're long term not the right fit. So that's one. But then obviously when COVID was over, our karma boom was over too. So all of a sudden, we have a lot of churn. The customer sometimes went back to in person. So that was a very difficult time for the company and for our entire industry. And then we had to do some really difficult decision of laying off people, and that sucks. We did 2 rounds of layoff. The first round I was so scared before I even announced it to my team. So basically what we learned is actually after the first round of layoff, our productivity, like I said, which I went up because it turns out we have a lot of people. Because we need a lot of people, then we need a lot of managing those people. And then so if we need to do something, there's multiple meetings around it. So things are actually moving quite slow when you have a lot of people. The other thing is also we have a lot of people maybe that are more on the junior side. I guess that's my takeaways for the current company is that we're trying to hire the very good people, slowly making sure that they're the right team. Initially, we can do some part-time people to try if that's the right fit or not before making the full-time commitment. So that's one thing we're doing right now. The other thing is also once we hire those people, we're trying to make sure they can be self-driven. So we try to avoid people who either maybe they're not experienced because we're a startup. We don't have the time to have an internship program to teach a lot of people. We also don't want to hire people that are not self-driven. They always ask is there any task for me? They can't identify or proactively solve their own problems. Then you have to spend a lot of time coaching them or making sure they're doing this thing on time, and that is a lot of work. So those are kind of the 2 criteria: making sure they're self-driven, also making sure they have the right experience, for the role. So as a result, we don't really need to have nearly as many meetings in the past as in the past. The third thing I did is I reduced all one-on-one. And right now, pretty much have no one-on-one. Kind of learn from Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, and that actually is pretty great. When the employee have any issue, they can call me. to unblock them, they can call me. And then we can have group meeting. We have daily stand-up that resolve those issues. But other than that, I don't really need a one-on-one for each of my direct report. So that way I can have a lot of direct reports. I think actually that is way more doable for me to have like 10 direct report, 12 direct reports. When we don't have one-on-one, I could just manage directly. And then I don't need another manager to manage in between. Where, in the previous company, you probably have like 5 direct reports. They each have like a few direct reports. Then we have multiple layers. And then you have to make sure the manager is a good manager that can like pass along the message. And that became really risky compared to the new model that I'm adopting right now.
And nowadays, the newer generation of companies that you mentioned about use much leaner teams and you have much more direct reports. Do you think this is a trend that will continue? And what is your think about why this thing happens now?
I'm not sure if we all have unlimited direct reports. Maybe we don't, maybe we don't need 20 direct reports when AI can do most of the work anyways. Or maybe I'll have a direct report that's AI, Right now, I'm no longer the CEO, so I guess as a board member,
so the pioneer of the next
probably more people will be like that, where we have a lot of AI agents that actually do the work. So I do think that management may also change. It became, how do you manage AI and human? Well, how does AI manage human? Sometimes AI can manage human too. So I do think that could happen very soon. And so that's number one. Number two is that right now we realize, a lot of time when you're, because we need to hire people with good savviness to figure out AI tools. If you're a marketing person, instead of only just focusing on your own old way of doing marketing, we also want people to be proactively understanding what are the tools I can use in AI that can make me way more productive. And it's really, really hard to find actually very good marketing people that are non-technical, but they're very savvy at trying and testing different AI tools and figure out the right process. Those people are very hard to hire, in my opinion. But if you can hire them, they can be way more productive because they can revolutionize the way that they do marketing. They can be 10x more productive than other marketers who don't know how to do that. So it's just that the discrepancy between a very effective person knowing how to use tools, knowing how to use AI, is going to be, instead of 10x marketer, probably we'll see 100x, just because they're so much more productive. So I think it's more now it's more important than ever to identify those 100x talent who can not only do their job well, but also leveraging AI to figure out how to upskill themselves. That's
a very interesting topic. I think that's probably also related to your current company. So I would love to touch more on that later. But before we go to the next journey, I would love to hear about later you also sold your random world and exit from company. What is the factor that played in that decision?
Well, we got multiple acquisition offers during our peak. But I was too cocky. It was like, hey, our company's doing well. We're going to go public, not going to sell. I didn't even sell any secondary because my competitor, actually one of my competitors, sold $200 million worth of secondary. And I didn't because I thought, okay, that's, I'm going to make way more money if I just kept going. But turns out I'm wrong, Turns out when the COVID is like over, then the boom is over, then suddenly you don't have that price anymore, So we ended up selling, but not nearly as a good price as the offer that we got back in the days. But that was the best offer we could get. It's more just like I think the growth is not there anymore. We tried to figure out many different ways to kind of repurpose virtual events, but I think the general zeitgeist was not available. People are willing to go more in person. So I think we're betting against the overall trend, which is kind of when I realized it's probably the right time to sell. And then we had a partner who they were focusing on in-person events, so they kind of need to supplement their offering by having more virtual events. So it's a perfect fit. So that's kind of when we decided to like sell our business to the other physical events company.
Yeah, so that's actually also a very interesting point about just startup founders. We need to make all decisions. A lot of times, the decision also whether should we continue with current business, should we sell the current business and start a new idea. What would be your advice to founders on that?
Well, I guess I don't know if I can predict the future. Like looking back, I think was that a better decision had I sell? I think yes, it was a better decision. It was a bit better price. But you also heard stories of Zuckerberg declining the Yahoo offer for $1 billion. Now he make what, 200 billion? So I think you keep hearing stories like that, and that maybe makes you more hopeful that your company can be super huge. But I think looking back, maybe the right decision could have been you sell some secondary, so then you have, you can make some money, and then you can decide if you want to take more risk or not. So I do think, I have to say, there's a lot of unknowns. Even though your company right now is doing well, even with current AI boom, the multiple is really high. Company are valued at crazy valuation. That may disappear the next year. So maybe the right rational thing would be sell something, have some secondaries. You can buy a house or something, feeling comfortable with your life. But then if you want to keep going, you could keep going. But I think I probably wouldn't go the other way like me. It was like, I'm not going to sell anything. If you maybe have family and kid, maybe you do want to sell a little bit. I think that's fair. But at the same time, it's also something where like today you got to offer for this much money. Tomorrow it maybe disappear. So the fact that you have this valuation does not mean that you're going to sell at this price. So there's so much volatility in the market that sometimes maybe I train myself to be mentally prepared for a huge price today, not huge price tomorrow, huge price the day after tomorrow. So I train myself to not be super swayed by a certain price, because that is fluctuating all the time.
So there's all these options on the table, and founders can make a judgment call based on situation.
Yeah, but there's no perfect answer though. Like I have friends
Exactly,
who sell, they're like, oh, I shouldn't have sold, and I'm not happy.
And a lot of times, like you mentioned, I think it reminds me of similar comments you added before. It's like you have to make a lot of decisions. Some are right, some are wrong. And as a founder, it's just you have to move forward.
You just have to accept that is the nature of your job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So after you sell the company, now you're a serial entrepreneur, and now is actually you like already exited from two companies. You start a new company of Heyo and HeyBoss, and tell us more about that journey.
Yeah. So after we sold Run the World, I know that I want to start another company. One is I enjoy the process of running Run the World. The other is I'm not satisfied with the outcome. I feel like I could do way more. So I think that hunger drives me to start another company. It was end of 2023 actually. The initial idea was we're going to build a gaming companies for kid. So we wanted to kind of build more like a character AI for kid, but with more games. So we were initially an educational gaming company. We're using AI to build games for kids to learn better.
How did you get that idea?
I was just like, that's growing up. There was a very famous cartoon called Doraemon in Asia.
Oh yes,
where kids
I watched that.
Get all their needs. They get all the Doraemon is a great partner and companion for kids. They teach the kids different things. They give them confidence. I thought that would be cool. Now after I saw ChatGPT, I thought that is the natural evolution. Is that everybody can have their Doraemon. That's kind of how we started the company, and we ended up making a lot of games Doraemon can basically play with kid. And so, what we quickly realized is that we have this AI agent that can initially brainstorm games and then quickly develop those games. And that's actually the same AI agent that today is the AI CEO. That was the AI. So that's what we created her.
From kids companion,
Astro was initially brainstorming ideas for kids games. Then she started building those games. Then we realized actually like earlier this year that the same technical stack we have built can also be good enough to build website and applications. So it's like very similar type of agent that we've built. We've always started from a non-technical people, like educator or kid, building their own game perspective. So we're really good at helping non-technical people build something technical. In this case, is a kid game. We realized the same technical stack can be applied to make website application as well, and that is a 100x bigger market, than kid. So then that's when we realized, hey, if it's a 100x bigger market, we have the technology to build that. We should pivot and actually make it happen.
Yeah, when does that happen?
That was like 4 months ago, actually. So
4 months ago,
that's when we expanded. And we renamed the company from Heyo to HeyBoss because we realized, hey, now we're going to tackle website and applications. We're going to not only serving kids, but also everybody who wants to build. So that's kind of the big evolution, I would say, this year. And then it's really a few weeks ago when we made the announcement, is the second biggest evolution is we realized we're no longer a co-pilot. We used to be a co-pilot. So, educator can have to guide the AI to build a game step by step. Our engineers sometimes helping in, chime in as well. But right now, the current company that we have is no longer a co-pilot. So people don't need to know how to prompt engineer. They can just say, I have a coffee shop, I want to make a website. Or, I'm a teacher, I want to sell my course. And then AI will figure out, we have an internal AI agent that does design, an AI product management agent, AI developer agent, AI content writer agent, AI marketer agent. So essentially you have a whole team working for you that you just need to give a demand that's in a high level. I want to make a website for my coffee shop. and then the product manager, designer, developer, content writer, they will figure out what to do and give you a final result in 9 minutes. So essentially, it's like we're permanently replacing all human dev agency. Today, you hire, to help you build website and apps in, Fiverr or other team that helps you make those things. We're essentially replacing each of the role in those companies. With Astra, essentially, we're replacing not only the individual, it's individual worker, but we also replace the leader. Essentially, the leader is an AI agent that leads all the other AI to deliver you a final result. So we essentially became a autopilot that is entirely replacing a human dev agency that helps any human with a business to build their website and applications. So that's kind of the new evolution for the company. Which is why I resigned, because I realized, if in terms of leading a team of AI agents, the AI CEO is doing a way better job than I could ever do. I have to sleep, I have to rest, I have to eat. And then the AI CEO doesn't need to do any of those. She can work all day, and she and her team can work, we can serve 1,000 customers all at the same time, in like parallel thread. And that doesn't work for me, Like I cannot multitask to that degree. So it makes the most sense for me to kind of more back down and then let the AI and their AI team take over because it's more efficient to deliver the final website or application faster for our customer.
You provided like end-to-end solutions in which your users will directly see the final output.
Correct.
So this will lower
from one prompt.
From the prompt to the final solution.
Correct. Yeah.
And so this brings back to the domain, to the domain that they are more familiar with. They can say whether the website is better or not.
Right.
So
and still that is subjective a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to making a website, you're like, oh, this coffee shop website looks great. That's very subjective. Yeah. So part of our job is not only to execute engineering from engineering standpoint, perfect engineering, bug-free and everything, but also to understand what kind of customer, what kind of taste do the customer has. What kind of style do they like? What kind of coffee shop do they have? Is it boutique coffee shop with Colombia beans from this organic farm? Is it more like a mass production, coffee shop that just wanted to more like convenient, location? Does the customer want to sell additional product like their coffee beans, where they just want to have a solution that is easy for SEO for Google to index? So we have to understand their business objective, and then based on their business objective, also we have to understand their personal taste. Are they more like, Instagrammy? Are they more like Gen Z vibe? Are they more traditional? And then we can make a website that really basically speaks to their language. For them to like us and want to pay us more. So we kind of have to do all of that, and that has nothing to do with engineering. It's more to do, it's kind of like agency today, they have to understand customer. So we do think that's a pretty good value proposition for customers. It's cheaper, you don't need to pay us anything, we give you the first version in 10 minutes. That's the same thing as waiting for a month for the agency to give you something, And then you can decide risk-free if you like it or not. If you like it, then pay us more. Pay us to host the website. Pay us to help you run your business. If you don't like it, that's okay. So for us, we have to make sure we're optimizing for like the success rate. Essentially, the customer needs to choose us after you see the first version.
So now you're taking the responsibility to turn like basically the hard work that you will do, turn the prompt into your final solutions, and then the users will make their own judgment call whether the final outcome is good.
Yeah, I would say the hardest part for our business is that because our user does not know how to write prompt, we have to understand how to write prompt based on their use. So when customers say, those buttons, there are too many buttons. So we have to know which button to keep and which button to remove. Because we have to basically, based on their nature of their business and their taste, we have to advise the actual execution solution. In terms of product management, we have to know, okay, this is the button. Those two buttons seem really similar in nature. Let's combine those. And that button is rarely used for that industry. Let's remove that. So we have to make that decision. The customer just needs to say, too many buttons. Keep one. And then we have to choose the right button. So I think the type of problem that our agent is doing a lot of time is to figure out the intent of the customer and also figuring out with their industry what is the right solution. Versus other kind of co-pilot tool for Cursor, you don't have to figure that out. You have to listen and understand the customer's request. But our customer request is very fuzzy. It's like this is not intuitive enough. I don't like this. This doesn't look very modern. Those are very vague instructions that we have to understand what he missed in this particular context and make it perfect for the customer.
You focus on making it so easy to use for users, and the users' instruction is often very fuzzy. So you have to do a lot more work to make sure the result is relevant. Can you tell us a little bit more about how did you do that?
Yeah, so our customer, because we're targeting the small business owner, we're targeting the marketer, we're targeting people who are not product manager, who are not engineer, who are not designer. And they know how their business run. Like, if they're an influencer, they know how to get more followers. They know what kind of courses to teach. If they're a coffee shop, they know coffee beans really well. They know Columbia bean is better, Blue Mountain bean is better. But they're not an expert in design digital solutions. So for us, it's like we have to make sure that first we build trust. They have to trust us just like they trust a human expert. I think the high level is just essentially, I think for most of the AI application company, you have to choose between, are you selling the process or are you selling the result? Selling the process means you're helping somebody who know what they're doing to make it more productive. Like Cursor, for example, selling the process of development. So you're the engineer, you know what you're doing. They're a co-pilot, they make it faster. So the person, you can trust the user to be the expert guiding you in that process.
Right.
If you're selling the result, like us, we're selling the result of having a great website that drives your business, then the user is not the expert in that process. They are the expert judging that result. So for us, we have to really double down on, in order to make the results relevant, we have to understand what the user intent is. We have to understand the right process ourselves. We have to deliver, we have to make sure our success is tied to the result, that is not tied to the process. So I think those two companies are very, very different. I'm expected to see more companies that are going to sell results with AI down the road, just like us. And I think they require them to think differently in terms of how they design their product features.
You mentioned that HeyBoss was launched 4 months ago. How did the growth look like?
Well, actually, we're alpha 4 months ago.
Oh, alpha.
And we kind of launched a few weeks ago.
A few weeks ago.
Yeah, so it's like growing pretty fast. We have tens of thousands of users already. It's pretty, I think I can see a lot of people obviously with the demand. Frankly speaking, when I first launched the company, I wasn't sure the exact use cases. We know that it will be very useful to help non-technical people build software, whether it's website or apps or games. But it's recent, in the past few weeks, I've realized that we're particularly effective at building website for non-technical people because they have way more website need than apps. The coffee shop owner needs a website, the plumber needs a website, the AI startup needs a website, your mom's photographer business needs a website, but they probably don't need to build their iOS app or Android app. So the need for website is way, way bigger for our audience. So we're planning to more double down on that kind of use case, making sure. But the website is not only just a static website. They want to have AI agent that serves customers. They want to have better SEO that automatically making sure they're ranking higher in Google. They wanted the website to look really cool and animated and modern. So there's many different requirements on the next generation of website. It's really a surface to drive people business. So imagine the website itself can proactively identify customer for you, can proactively greet customer, can convert customer. And that is going to be kind of what we do.
It reminds me that the experience I had early, like the Run the World, like it's the event, but the event is just one picture.
Correct.
Of the whole thing. Does that experience influence any decisions?
Well, I kind of learned like event was also a channel for people to, either build more audience. So like for events, there either is a lead gen, so you want more people to know about your brand. You want more people. Number two is you want to identify the right lead. So you do some events that's targeted. It's like maybe talking about like how do you raise money from venture capital firm, and that is probably like, let's say you organize that event, so you can quickly identify funders. So you can then convert those funders. So that's number two. Number three is like you have a lot of VIP customer. You want to build closer relationship with them. So you have some events where you fine dining, like great wine, great golf, so people kind of have more affinity towards your brand, and they kind of know your team better. I would say those are the three purposes why people have events. Eventually, it's for their business. It's either to get more people know about their business, getting the right people come to their business, and also make existing people get closer to their business. So those are the three objectives of any event.
Yes.
So we kind of learned that the event is just a tool to help people reach those three goals. More brand, essentially more fame, and like, more money, and then better relationship. Or those are the three things that people care about for events. And I think for us, it's a similar thing. Like the website is just a gateway. Ultimately, you either wanted to, the website looks great, so it makes you look great. So makes you have more face, and then or the website makes you money, makes you get rich. Either get fame, get rich, and you don't enjoy the process of building website and prompting. You want us to get it done, so you want to get lazy. So essentially, it's like get lazy, get rich, and get famous. And those are the three things we're optimizing for our
the
people.
Final result. Actually, you put it in such a great way. It's like both events and the website are the means to their end.
To an end. I would believe a lot of software are doing the same thing, right? There are different means. But essentially, imagine the AI agent be so good. All we do is just lie on the beach. I'm lazy. Getting famous, automatically
Yeah.
and getting paid.
That would be best.
That would be great. I think our customer will love that, to get on the chilling on the beach. It's like, oh, money, 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 fame, fame, fame.
We'll all be invested in the business
Yeah.
owners while AI working for us.
I can see that happen pretty soon.
You mentioned about like you starting with more horizontally, like tools for non-coders, and then you did alpha on that, and you get the users, and then in the past few weeks you started to get a clear picture about what is your target audience is ICP and what is the plan ahead. Walk us through what is the process you use to figure it out? Like what data you look at?
Well, I'm probably not the most. I would say like my approach typically is when I have an idea, I like to test it out first. You know, there are, I would say, two different type of founders. Some founders like to think. There's a Chinese saying that you think a lot before you act. I tend to not follow that conventional wisdom. I tend to act a lot before, so help me think. You know, so for us, you know, we kind of realized that using prompt generating code and coding is getting better. For sure, it's going to help a lot of people who are not traditionally coders. For sure. But in terms of the actual use cases, I wasn't sure, and I didn't do a segment of different. We could, but I think it's a little fuzzy. I still have no clue. Yeah. So my approach typically is like, let's quickly build MVP and get a lot of people and just see which kind of use case we're better at. My approach may not be the correct one, but that is my preferred approach. Is I just try a lot of things and see what people do. So initially, I wouldn't say I put a lot of thought into exactly what use case. I kind of know that if you can serve non-technical people with coding, there's something there, but I don't know what. So I essentially we did the alpha. We try to do everything, obviously, and then we try to understand, you know, which kind of use case are people happiest. Yeah. Because for example, we know that, you know, when we make a great website, people are really, really happy. But if they're using us to make you know, a new feature within Facebook, they're not as happy because.
How do you know a user is happy?
Well, we actually talk to a lot of them, obviously.
Oh, you talk to them.
We can also look at their comment to the AI, right? They're like, why can you not get it right? Or I talked to you 3 times. Then you know they're not happy. You do see a lot of feedback now with all of the transcript, right? AI can even help us interpret the emotional value of those customers. Are they happy or not happy? So we essentially will look at for what kind of segment are the customer happiest, what segment of the customer not happy, and then within those segment, which segment make us the most money. Sometimes we don't know yet, but we could look at past examples. For example, you know that if they make a game for their girlfriend, so their girlfriend is happy now, they're probably only going to impress the girlfriend one time. They're not going to keep paying us because they probably, you know, they're not going to do the same thing every single day.
You monetize early.
You monetize early, but it's not a lot of money, right? But we do know that when you have a website, other people have proven that is pretty good business. Because unless you don't want to run your business anymore, you probably will return to us. So different use cases do have different budget. And I think I would say develop an app also has a lot of budget too. But we realized that through our trial, when a person wanted to use us to build very, very complicated apps, that's when we fell short because we're autopilot. AI is not going to understand every single corner cases. If your app is super complicated, requires some third-party API, our AI doesn't know that yet, so we're not going to do nearly as a good job right now. But if your app is really simple, maybe for marketing apps, you want to do a quick like mortgage calculator that helps people sell your real estate business, all of that kind of stuff, then we can do a really good job. But if you want to make the next generation Devin using like if you want to build Devin using HeyBoss, I think we're not good enough to do that. So we kind of understood for apps, within apps, there are certain cases we can solve really well. There are other cases where we're just too dumb right now. And so that's kind of how we kind of use that. Basically, the current AI capabilities, our technical stack, and then are the segment of the user rich enough to give us a lot of money? Or are they like willing to pay a lot of money for those use cases? And then we kind of figure out what kind of segment to focus on.
Got you. Yeah, that's a really insightful advices, and I help about 3 things from what you just talked about. The first is like look at your users whether they're happy, like identify the use cases in which your users are the most likely happy. Second is how big the market size is, like the one with enough budget. And the third, whether that is technically viable. So that's,
the other thing I forgot is the frequency because
the frequency. I
learned a lot about frequency right now. You know, from my old events days. So I prefer some use cases where they will use us frequently.
So not the wedding and dating, but the whole website.
Well, if you have a ceremony has a wedding gallery that celebrate your marriage, perfect. But if you only have like one-time wedding registry, maybe that is not as long lasting. as new but then we can make it. Maybe every year we give you anniversary photos, add it to your wedding, so you can have a whole gallery of your life.
Yeah, increase the frequency is the thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we want to make sure our customer don't forget about us. There's a forget zone. I think there's some PM, CPO, I forgot which company, but mentioned there's a forget zone. So the customer uses you less than once a month, they will forget you. So then you have to reacquire them again. You have to pay for ad, get influencer, talk about your brand again, because they forget about you. If your frequency is more frequent than once a month, then there are ways you can retain them. So I think frequency matters a lot.
Yeah, that's actually very, very interesting point about frequency, because retention also depending on the problem you're solving. If your problem, the users don't really even have a frequent need of doing that, it's impossible.
But you need to make a lot of money right now.
Yeah, so just making money early on for that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, speaking of that, I saw a company that was really smart. They actually, they help when a person died, they help you process all the estate of that, senior, maybe your grandpa died or something. Yeah. Then they help you figure out all the process of allocating his estate to all your family members, selling his houses, everything, and they take 1% of your estate. So that's a very not frequent use case, but they make 1% of a senior person's entire life saving. And I think the U.S.'s average household estate was almost $1 million, so they make a lot of money. And then for them, it's a great business. They can spend all the marketing to acquire that one customer, knowing that they're going to get 1% of the entire estate of the family.
Yes.
But that's a great business.
Yeah.
But the problem is we're not making nearly as much, right?
Yeah.
So then it became not making sense.
Yeah. So I want to also dive in more about your founder journey as well for the HeyBoss. You started this company as a solo founder. How does that experience look like? Well,
this is my first time as a solo founder. I mean, I did have a co-founder for my previous company. We worked great until it's not. And then, so I think I learned that, maybe it's important to make sure you have the right person. If you don't have the right person, it's also okay to start alone. I know YC always tell you to find a co-founder, but I also learned through my own experience, if you don't have the right co-founder, it's better if you stick to yourself, So, so I think that at least right now, obviously, I never been a CTO before. But I had an early team for this new company. So I had an early team. I was fortunate enough that I know a lot of good engineers, and I also have a lot of previous employee from my previous company that I can pull. So this time around, I think being a solo founder, I don't see any downside to that because I already have a pretty capable early team. But I also realized, YC told you not to get a co-founder, but I keep seeing great solo founder popping up and their company doing great. So I personally, I don't think solo founder is at a disadvantage. I do think that means you have to do more work. There's not going to be a person who you can cry with. You have to cry alone. But if you can cry alone, you can also be a great solo founder. I think it's totally fine.
So there is also a broader trend of solo entrepreneur trend. I think it's happening. Partially also because the tools are getting much better.
The AI,
HeyBoss
totally.
is getting better. So people who used to need strong technical co-founders now they don't necessarily need. If they have the vibe coding tools, and vice versa. If you have people who have strong technical, they can hire AI marketers or AI CEOs. They don't need to.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. This. So how do you think about this trend of these solo entrepreneurs?
Well, I think because AI can do so much more, I think there are going to be a lot of AI that enables people, right? Because we name our company HeyBoss because we believe that our customer is the boss. We're the AI team that empowers that boss. We didn't name our company HeyBosses because we think it's probably enough. A lot of people are going to be their own boss, So I do think that is going to be a trend. More people are going to have a lot of ideas. Even with HeyBoss right now, we're already seeing people having multiple ideas. They can each build an app. Our AI team can build multiple apps at the same time for the same customer. And they can testing 5 different ideas, see which ideas stick. So not only do they gonna become entrepreneur, they're probably gonna run multiple businesses as well. I think that's gonna happen pretty fast. So that's number one. Number two is I do still think that there's going to be collaboration between humans. I do think for certain company, you probably still want to have co-founder. I mean, I'm not saying you should not have co-founder. I say for certain company, if you have somebody you trust, if you can have complementary skill, I think it's totally okay to have co-founder. But at the same time, for a lot of businesses, I think a lot of people are going to be realizing that before I only know product, but I don't know marketing, I don't know tech. As a result, I need to find a co-founder. But now those technical skills or skill gap is no longer the blocker because AI can help you. AI agent can help you fill those fill those skill gaps. So you may have a lot of people who are really young with not that much experience, not that much expertise. They can leverage AI who can provide the expertise. And then they can provide the idea where they have ability to attract a lot of attention because I do think go-to-market is very important. Or they have a lot of industry, knowledge that they know, they have particular taste about their industry, and then they can leverage a whole swarm of AI employees to satisfy their vision. I do think there's going to be more examples like that. So you can have Zuckerberg, you can have a lot of future Zuckerberg who don't know how to code. But they may have like those subtle tastes on social networking. They can become the next Zuckerberg. I think that's going to happen pretty fast.
Another thing, I also want to talk about the human employee because you mentioned about, especially when you become do the startup yourself, it's very, very important to have good founding team members. And can you tell us more how you find them and how do you make sure they are motivated and happy in your company?
I think motivation comes from two sides, I would say. One is that there are certain people that are really, really intrinsically motivated. I do think it's important to be intrinsically motivated. And once you have those people, they're self-driven themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important. I don't think you can cultivate somebody to build their... I think it's hard to coach intrinsic motivation. It's easier to filter through people without that and identify people with that. So that's number one. Number two is that I do think it's important that people share the same vision. For us, we're trying to help, I don't know, 1 billion people run their own business with AI. So I do think that's a big enough vision that a lot of people get really excited for it. And so I think that vision does attract a lot of people, especially now, I used to work at Facebook. My Facebook coworkers making $1 million a year. They're making so much money. It's almost impossible to, incentivizing them to quit their job just because the startup is going to hopefully go IPO and make them a lot of money when they probably can make way more money reliably. If we do the math for a lot of those people, I think what's driving them is less about money because they already have a lot of money. It's more about maybe the vision, or maybe they're unsatisfied that they don't feel like they have the agency to do things. So I do think it's important to motivate people, try to figure out what drives them. Because I think there are twofolds. One is like people who are really hungry, they haven't proven themselves, they want to prove themselves. So that's one type, where maybe they didn't get a Facebook offer, but they believe they can. They believe they are still good talent, that you can attract them and say, hey, this is your time to shine. There are also other group of people where they have enough money, or they know they can make enough money, that the money is no longer the driving factor. So you have to figure out the right motivation. Whether it's but typically it's either it's like self-actualization of being useful to the society. It could be like having more freedom because your previous boss it sucks and you want somebody that gives you agency. It could be that you really care about fame and you want to get famous. I think there's not. I don't judge people based on what drives them, but I do think that they need to have at least one thing that drives them.
Right.
I tend to think that when we have similar vision, that people wanted to make impact, that is where I can find the biggest alignment with my employees. But I do think sometimes people say, I just want to get famous, I want to get rich, and I respect that. And they can be good, motivated employees too. I'm not saying that's not good, but I'm just saying it's important to understand what drives them and see if your company can offer what drives them,
I think there are some qualifications you need to have for a startup. They need to have a drive, regardless of what the drive is. Could be like a very wide spectrum of drive, but at least they need to have a drive. They want to get to somewhere. And then as a startup founder, you need to understand where they want to do, what is their drive, and whether you are the right places, you can provide the right places for them to. If your company is not the right place, totally fine. They can find it.
I think it's important to know that your company is not the right company that
at least
offer the drive.
Time.
Yeah. Because it rarely end well based on my past experience.
Exactly. And so that process is basically curate a team that has a strong drive and stay close together with shared visions.
But I do think it's fairly enough. When you're a small startup, why would the best people at Facebook join you when they make millions of dollars and you're just a no-name startup? I think it's very normal for those high talent not want to join you because you're just a small startup. So I do think it's important to realize sometimes you may not get the best talent because you're a startup. So but I'm saying maybe you don't get the best proven talent. from Harvard, from Stanford, go to Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But you can still get really good unproven talent who have the raw talent, but maybe they don't meet all of the resume check. Maybe they don't get a job at Facebook because they didn't go to the school. They didn't work in fancy companies. But you can still identify those people. I mean, typically those people's resume got rejected by Facebook because Facebook doesn't have so many resumes. They can use the AI system that just filter through. But there's a lot of people that are hidden gems and they don't get accepted by Facebook. But you can still filter through those people that probably are like happy with working at your current tiny startup that no one cares about. So I do think you have to accept that reality is that you're not going to attract the best people objectively.
On resume, yeah.
You're not going to you're not going to like easily attract the top 8 talent. Everybody have consensus. This is the great talent.
Yeah.
Because you're so small.
Yeah.
And that you have to learn to maybe co-work with those people as well.
Yeah.
Motivate them. Sometimes maybe you just don't have the best talent, but you don't need the best talent to maybe prove your product market fit. Once you prove product market fit, you could always up level your team, hiring attracting more people. But I would say most people don't have the luxury of having the best talent when you're a tiny, small startup.
Exactly. As a startup founder, we need to work with all the resources we have.
Sometimes that's okay, I think. If you identify the right business, they can satisfy customer requests. I don't think you need the Facebook all-star team to win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's also not required.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I just have one last question for you. Is you are working in a space as well. There's a lot of things happening almost every day. How do you keep current? What is the information sources you usually you use? Look? Yeah.
I mean, I obviously use LinkedIn, Twitter quite a bit. Yeah. I do have a lot of friends. Like events like this, so I get to know you. You can show me what's going on. So I do think there's a lot of in person that I do in the Bay Area. And then I also try to maybe sometimes I look at some papers, some people share with me some papers to kind of understand how AI is evolving. But mostly I just try a lot of AI product. There's a new startup, I try it, I pay for the subscription for a month, see what happens. And I try a lot of different things.
Yeah. Other than the product that of HeyBoss, what other products you find interesting on the market?
Well, I'm still beta testing. There is a ghostwriting app that helps you post everything in Twitter. Yeah. Essentially, that helps you identify. Actually, I think it helps you. One app helps you post LinkedIn and Twitter as a founder. Yeah. I tried that. It sucks. So the tweet they post for me doesn't sound genuine. It seems really cliche. I think my followers hate it. So I stopped using that. I try another app that obviously make very good marketing videos. So you can say this mug, and then they can make a virtual model holding that mug. So it's no longer HeyBoss where there's talking head. They can actually holding the product. I thought that was cool. I don't really need that for our business. Obviously, I just like to try it. And obviously, I try a lot of music app like Suno. I love Suno a lot because I used to make my music and I will compose everything. Now I can make Suno. It's much easier. I also try all kinds of apps. I would say a lot of different AI applications. Some ridiculous ones, some consumer friendly one. And just so that I'm keep up to date, what's going on.
That's cool. Yeah. I think we should ask you for a recommendation for other founders to interview for the
product. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Really appreciate you take time to chat with us and share with the community. And how would people connect with you or keep?
You can follow me in Twitter. My name here.
I will put the link.
My LinkedIn's here. So just follow me, and then I'd love to keep in touch. And also, the company is HeyBossAI.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for taking time to chat. Yeah, we'd love to have you come back in the future to share more updates of the HeyBoss.
I love that. Maybe I'll have my AI CEO joining as well.
Thanks for watching the full interview. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.